This story brought to you by NWMissouriNews.com.
We were married in June of '44, June 11th of '44, and 3 months later we got our notice to be shipped overseas. Mm-hmm. So we had no idea where we were going, but I took a train from Chicago to Newport News, Virginia, and from there we got on a boat and went across the Atlantic. And my diary, I kept a diary all that time, and otherwise I would have forgotten most of it. But I remember writing I was seasick most of the time going over. And the big question was, where were we going? My guess was Italy. Right. Boy, was I wrong. But we went over, stopped at Gibraltar, and that's the first time I ever saw Gibraltar. And that was quite an experience. And then we continued across the Mediterranean. And much later, when I was teaching history and knew a little more about it, I followed Lord Nelson's route across the Mediterranean when he was going to fight Napoleon and fight the great naval battles there. We stopped at Algiers. Then we went through the Suez Canal. We stopped at Alexandria. Now we knew where we were going. And the destination was going to be Bombay. And we joined a convoy, if I remember all this, we joined a convoy at, just as we went through the Suez Canal, made up of several other transports, mostly British. I think we were the only American transport there. And we went to Bombay. And let's see what else I can remember about it. When we landed at Bombay, we got on a train immediately and took a train trip. It was a very interesting experience, all the way across India, stopping at Nagpur, which is in central India, all the way over to Calcutta. And once we got to Calcutta, the question was, how and when would we go where? And after, to make a long story short, we ended up, the group I was in, ended up flying the hump over to China. Now, the only time I flew the hump was going and coming. Mm-hmm. Once we got to China, we were assigned to a little air base at Yunnan, which was near Kunming, way out in western China. And there I was introduced to the C-47. Now here's the second interesting experience. I had never been inside a C-47. Mm-hmm. And no training whatsoever in it. So I was put in a C-47 without any experience to fly the missions we were going to fly. And I learned to fly the C-47 from the co-pilot seats. What we did, the troop carrier squadron I was in, job with all of these troop carrier squadrons was to ferry anything that needed to be flown as supplies to the troops. They flew, now get this, mules, ammunition, gasoline, food, mainly rice, troops, and one of the most interesting stories I heard after I got there, it didn't happen to me, but I heard about it and they swore it was true, was that flying Chinese troops from one base to another, some of the Chinese troops had a habit of vomiting in the plane, which the crew chief had to clean up. And one day, he told the officer in charge of the Chinese troops, he says, if anyone else vomits and pukes on the plane, throw him out. The story is, when they got to the destination, there were one Chinese soldier short. They actually did it, which taught me a lesson of the value of human life and the differences there were in different places. See, the crew chief was joking, and that Chinese officer took him seriously. But the job was to fly drop missions, and that's the main thing that we did. Now, a drop mission simply meant that suppose you had food, ammunition, whatever your crew was supposed to take, and you would get to the destination and go about 200 feet above the ground and circle around, and the crew chief and his assistants would push the stuff out, attach a little parachute. You've probably seen it done, or pictures of it. And that was called a drop mission. and sometimes behind the lines were either American or Chinese troops. And sometimes we ran in a little bit of trouble. One day we were flying around like that, and we were over Japanese area and didn't realize it until there were tracer bullets flying all around us. We got out of there in a hurry. The plane next to us got shot up pretty bad, but we were lucky. I could see the tracer bullets a few feet away from me, but we got out.